Hey, it's me, Viv, and today I have a really good religious group to talk about with you. It's just a really juicy one. I got pretty sucked into this one. There was a lot of good information out there, a lot of fun little tangents to get lost down. It's Raëlism, and I'm very excited to talk about it with you today. So, let's start at the very beginning with a man named Claude. Claude Maurice Marcel Vorilhon was born September 30th, 1946, in Vichy, France, but was raised in nearby Ambert, France. So let's just clear the air right now that I'm definitely gonna say some names wrong because they're in French. Really sorry about it. Anyway, his mother's name was Colette and his father's name was Marcel, and his birth was a bit of a scandal because it was out of wedlock. His father was a Jew and he was from a town called Alsace, France, which is in the eastern part of France near Germany. So during the time of when he met Colette, he was hiding out more in the central part of France, hiding from the Nazis. Because, like, remember World War II. So when anti-Semitism finally started dying down in the years after the war, his father returned to Alsace. That I said that right, I think. Alsace, and abandoned Claude and Colette. But he continued to see Colette, and it was said that they would, like, take trips together, like take trips to see each other and be together. So Colette eventually left Claude with her sister and her mother, uh, to go run off and be with Marcel. So Claude didn't really have the most stable of early upbringings. Colette has since said in interviews that she left Claude with her sister Therese because she just thought she would make a better mother. And Therese did, in fact, care for Claude like her own child. Therese has, in interviews, said that Claude was a very sweet boy, that he was very friendly. He really loved telling stories and he had an active imagination. She also described him as someone who really enjoyed the spotlight, maybe a little bit too much, like some class clown type energy. He had also a lot of self belief bordering on arrogance. And he always wanted to be a pop star or a race car driver. Like, those were his two childhood dreams, was to be either a pop star or a race car driver. His mother, aunt, and grandmother were all said to be atheists, but they grew up from a Catholic background. And then his father is Jewish, so he grew up with a few different kind of opinions, religious opinions influencing his upbringing. But he attended a Catholic boarding school. And when he was at this Catholic school, it was said that he was a mediocre student with mediocre grades who was quite unruly. But his teachers did recognize his active imagination and his talent for writing, like writing stories. One of the stories from this time of his life is that apparently he caused quite a scandal because he took communion, you know, the Catholic thing where, like, the priest puts the wafer on your tongue, and then you take a sip of wine and it's supposed to be symbolic of the body and blood of Christ. Well, he took communion and he wasn't baptized. So that was, like, quite a scandal. Apparently you're not supposed to take communion unless you're baptized. So then everyone got quite upset and he, thought it was all fun and games. So when he was 15, his father died and he decided that he was going to run away from home, hitchhike his way to Paris with nothing but a guitar, and see if he could make his way in the music industry. He played on the streets and in cabarets, just, getting scrappy. And he had a pretty good face, like a pretty good look. People thought he was pretty good looking, and he had a decent amount of talent. So he actually got, like, a little bit of attention, and he ended up winning a radio show contest in the area in 1963. And then he started working with a guy named Lucian, uh, who was the director of a national radio program. So with that guy, he signed a contract, and he took the stage name of Claude Seller, and he got on the road to being a teen pop star. He released 6 singles, including one that translates to Honey and Cinnamon, which was a minor hit. So he's doing pretty well. He's feeling pretty good, and he's chasing his dreams and finding some success. Like, he's kind of a rising star. Like, that's what he's feeling. He's thinking it's just a matter of time before he becomes the, teen singing sensation that he set out to be. But unfortunately, Lucian, he tragically committed suicide in September 1970. Very sad. So his career in music really fizzled out after that, because he didn't have, the person who had believed in him anymore, who was backing him. And around this time, he met a woman named Marie Paul Cristini, who was a nurse, and they got married in 1970. Uh, and they decided to move back to an area like near where he grew up in Ambert. And they rather quickly had 2 children, a daughter and then a son. So after his music career sort of poofed, apparently he'd been saving all of that money so that he could be a race car driver, because remember, that was his other dream as a kid, was to be a race car driver. So he'd been saving all of his music money to try his hand at race car driving. He had a brief go of it before it was like, just really not very good at this. This is not, uh, uh, just not very good, not good enough at it. So he decided to start a car magazine, a race car driver magazine instead. And it was called Autopop, with the first issue releasing May of 1971. So the magazine Autopop, it was aimed at race car drivers. That's who the audience was race car drivers. And it was supposed to be advice on like how to get started as a race car driver, reviews for various sports cars, um, new French circuits, just a variety of advice about like automobiles and race car drivers and stuff like that. But in 1973, he faced another streak of bad luck, because the French prime minister at the time, he actually ended up banning race car driving and all motor racing, because of the oil crisis that was happening at the time. So, bummer. So the magazine didn't really have anyone to sell to, and sales plummeted, and that it kind of just flopped. So now Claude, he's tried his hand at both of his childhood dreams, and he's failed at both. Bummer. So now what? Okay, so before we get into what happened next, I just have to mention that during the 60s and 70s, there was a real fervor for UFO sightings in a lot of countries, including France. Just people reporting sightings. Some of the sightings became really high profile and garnered a lot of media attention. At the time, the Cold War was causing a lot of distrust of governments. Also, it was a time period of a lot of like technological and scientific advancement. The movies and media, like books and movies and stuff, were using those things as inspiration to write stories, which just generally kind of created this environment where people were believing in UFOs. Like, people thought that there were secret government projects happening that were being hid from the public. France was actually a particular hotspot for UFO sightings. I didn't know this, but they had so many sightings and reports for UFOs that they started an official government research group in 1977 just to manage all of that. Back to Claude. Okay, so on December 13th, 1973, Claude decided to go for a morning walk. So he was walking around this inactive volcanic crater that's in his area called Puy, Puy. I practice this and it's only making it harder to say. It's Puy de la Salisse. Puy, Puy, Puy de la Salisse. Okay, so he's walking around this area of this inactive volcano, and it's secluded and quiet. And then that's when he said he had an encounter that changed everything. He said he saw a strong flashing light, and then he saw something shiny and metallic and bell-shaped come by, appearing in the sky, floating, making absolutely no noise. He recognized it as a flying saucer, and it hovered about 2 meters over the ground, or 6.5 feet for us American folks, when a staircase like appeared out of the bottom and just came down to the ground. And then a male extraterrestrial being emerged walking down the staircase. Claude described this being as about 4 foot tall, with almond eyes and long black hair and a small beard, with a green jumpsuit, and the air around him, he said, seemed to shimmer a little bit. And then I thought this was kind of funny. He also added that his skin was white, but with a slightly greenish tinge, a bit like someone with liver trouble, is what he said. And the being told him in French, "Hey, I came to meet with you." And Claude was like, "I'm sorry, you speak French?" And then the alien was like, "Well, yeah, I speak all of Earth's languages." And then the alien was like, "Why did you come for a walk here today?" And Claude was like, "I don't know, I just kind of felt like it, I guess." And then the alien was like, "That was me. I was telling you telepathically to go for a walk here today so I could meet with you." And then the alien was like, "And why did you read the Bible recently?" And Claude was like, "I don't know, I guess I just kind of felt like it." And then the alien was like, "Actually, that was me too. I telepathically was telling you to read the Bible because I'm going to talk to you about it." So the alien invited Claude up to the ship so they could talk more about it, in which he told Claude that he was going to be the messenger to tell the world about the aliens. And they told him that they had picked him for a few reasons. One of them was because they wanted someone from a country renowned the world over for freedom, and that is France. France is the only one that fits that bill, according to the aliens. They also said they wanted someone who was open to ideas and a free thinker without being anti-religious. They also wanted someone who wasn't necessarily a great writer or a great scientist, because they didn't want someone that people would jump to conclusions about the story being made up when the messenger like told about the alien visitations. They also wanted someone born after 1945, um because of the atomic bomb, and Claude was born in 1946. So I guess they didn't want to fetter with anybody who might have been born before the atomic bomb. So just quite a ragtag group of criteria, if you ask me. But, that's what Claude says they were looking for. And I don't know. Who knows the mind of aliens? Who knows the mind of aliens? I don't. Then the alien was like, "Okay, go home. Don't tell anybody about this meeting. And we'll meet here tomorrow, same time, same place." Okay. So Claude said that he had, I'm sorry, this is very serious to Claude. So Claude said that he had 6 meetings. I don't know why I'm giggling. He said he had 6 meetings with the aliens, a series of 6 meetings, in which the alien mostly went through passages in the Bible with Claude, explaining to him how, in great detail, the aliens, they're called the Elohim, and they had created humans, like through advanced technology and DNA manipulation. So the Elohim are, that's what they're called, the species of aliens who created humans through scientific means, through their advanced scientific technology. Claude claims that the aliens had 40 messengers throughout history to be their personal messengers sent by the Elohim. to share the truth with the world. Okay. And these messengers include Jesus and Moses and Elijah and Muhammad and Buddha and, get this, Joseph Smith. I am not even kidding. Claude included Joseph Smith in his list of these messengers. Isn't that funny? Oh my God. Mormonism just cannot stop popping up everywhere. Now, Claude is the special messenger for the Elohim, and they told him that he will be the last one before they come to Earth, make themselves known to the humans. Now, the alien spent a lot of time explaining to Claude how their message had been distorted with the previous like prophets that they had on Earth. So because there was a general lack of technological advancement in the world at the time, they couldn't understand the meaning of it, which does beg the question, why even have messengers at all? Like, if the message requires a certain amount of technological advancement in order to understand, and like you want the humans to understand it, either give us the technology or butt out until we get there. I don't know. But now, though, now humans are really on the brink of having enough technological know-how, and on the brink of like DNA breakthroughs to be able to have the message make sense. So, with those advances on the horizon, the Elohim are preparing to come to Earth and make themselves known to the humans, but they want to feel like they're going to be welcomed by the humans. They want to feel like the humans know about them and are ready for them and are going to be happy to see them, I guess, because they are our beloved creators. They are full of love for us. So it's Claude's job as messenger to prepare people, to hasten the time when the Elohim will come, which will basically be the apocalypse, because it will be the end of the world as we know it. So Claude set to work starting his religious movement to let people know about these alien Elohim creators who are excited to come to Earth and be welcomed by us. He appeared on TV programs, radio programs, gave a lot of interviews, and people were really intrigued because of this wacky factor. And Claude seemed to really like lean into that. He went all in. He was kind of taking the attitude of all press is good press. There is no such thing as bad press. He would make these wild, bold claims on purpose to be divisive and to get people talking. This really is an attitude that he still carries to this day when he talks about the movement, because he knows that if he is wacky and wild, people will tune in, people will be interested, people will be watching. In his mind, this is the best way to get people talking, to get people aware of the Raëlian movement, even if what he is saying might be taken the wrong way or might be misconstrued. He doesn't care. The goal is to be shocking. Shocking. So soon he had gained a merry little band of followers, and they were mostly people who were into UFOs and science fiction, or who had like personal UFO experiences or sightings themselves. And in December of 1974, an organization was officially started based on his ideas, which was called MADECH, MADECH, which was an acronym in French that translates to Movement for the Welcoming of the Elohim, Creators of Humanity. The group's first big project was to raise money for Claude to be able to self-publish his first book, which was called The Book That Tells the Truth. And members of the Raëlian movement, of this religion today, still consider this book, they still treat it with great reverence. Now, some high ranking members of this MADEC group that he created wanted to be more broad in their interests of UFOs, like outside of just Claude's experiences. And they didn't really want him to be like the ultimate and only authority in the group. They wanted it to be more equitable and have multiple interests. But ultimately, Claude was like, I'm starting a religion here with me as the leader. So If you like want to just go join a UFO interest group, then maybe you should just go do that. So he dismissed them and he replaced them with high ranking people uh, who were his most loyal followers. Soon after forming the group, he also said that he had further contact with the aliens, with the Elohim, including getting taken to another planet to meet with the previously assigned messengers, which he wrote another book about. I guess they had a whole like messengers conference. And then soon after that, he actually ended up disbanding the Matic group, uh, because there was still just too much opposition to him in that group. And he like wanted to be the ultimate leader. Like he wanted to be worshipped. Okay, is that so much to ask for a guy to just get a little worship around here? You know, God. So he reworked it a little bit, and then he started the official Raëlian movement. It had a much stricter hierarchy with him at the top, and there was just more structure in place also with like religious ritual practices, like turning it in like to a real religion. Around this time is when he took on the name of Rael, which is a Hebrew name that translates to God rules or contends, and it can also be a diminutive of the name Israel. But he said for his purposes, it translates to mean like in reality is what he says. He says it actually translates like according to the Elohim. It translates to mean the messenger of those who come from the sky. Okay, so now we're officially on the road of this being a religion and calling themselves Raëlians. So, how did they start spreading the message further? Well, in 1976, some of the early Raëlians were actually sent to Quebec, Canada, on a mission to attract followers because they were like, okay, these people are also French. So let's go. That makes the most sense to start preaching to people who speak our own language. So they went to Quebec, start gathering some followers. Also, along with the books that Claude was self-publishing. Claude, aka Rael. I'm just going to call him Claude, okay? It's easier. All the books that Claude had self-published, they also started this publication called The Apocalypse, and everything was in French, but eventually they got things translated into English, and that helped them reach a much wider audience. Also, they started official missions in Japan in 1980, Africa in 1982, and Australia in 1990. So they're, getting to work, getting scrappy, grabbing a few followers from some different countries too. So also in the 1980s, the Raëlians bought a big piece of land in southern France near Albi, which they named Eden. Life in Eden was really unusual. So there's also a Netflix documentary out there about the Raëlian movement. If you're interested, I recommend it. I watched it, but it is in French and it's intended like for a French audience, but it's still very interesting. But they showed a lot of footage of this part. Like apparently the Raëlians living in Eden had a lot of video cameras. But it was a very like open and free-spirited community, just like really hippie feeling. A lot of people enjoying nature and being away from the conventional world and also being very naked. So just a bit of warning, if you watch the Netflix documentary, they don't censor these parts. There's just straight up a lot of nudity. Remember how it's a French show though? Part of the movement was a rejection of more conservative ideas of sexuality and instead an open acceptance of all kinds of relationships and, comfort with the human body. Just an openness of like, we're all humans, we all have bodies. People said it was really quite a special place to be, just really freeing with everyone being really comfortable in their skin, in their bodies, freely expressing love, having sex. And there was just a magic to it. Like it was so freeing to be away from the world. This free spirited and open kind of community attracted a lot of people. So let's get into a little bit of specifics here about what's on the menu for beliefs and practices of a Raëlian. Like, what does it feel like to be part of this Raëlian religion? Most fundamentally, like I mentioned earlier, Raëlians believe that humans were created by these technologically advanced extraterrestrials called Elohim. They view the Bible through this lens, and interpret events like the Garden of Eden to be the story of, I'm so sorry, the Garden of Eden are actually the story in which the Elohim, it's like the story of the laboratory where the Elohim made the first humans, is what they believe. And the Great Flood was actually flooding from huge tidal waves from a nuclear missile explosion sent by the Elohim, and that Noah's Ark was actually a spaceship that preserved the DNA of animals so that they could be cloned and resurrected after the flood receded. Also, another example, the Tower of Babel, that was actually people trying to build a rocket ship to reach the Elohim's planet. So you can see here how it's a lot of reinterpreting religious passages with this lens of super technologically advanced aliens. Raëlians say that they actually believe that Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and again, Mormonism pops up out of nowhere. They believe that all religions actually are from the Elohim and contain little nuggets of truth. All of these religions were just misinterpretations of humans trying to understand the messages from the Elohim. And like I mentioned before, because of humanity's utter lack of understanding about the great advanced technology of the Elohims, the message got distorted in all of these religions. But according to the Raëlians, they believe that the Elohim will return someday, which will be the apocalypse or the millennium, like talked about in the book of Revelations. And when they come back to Earth and make themselves known unto the humans, they will share their advanced technologies with us. And so it's the point of the Raëlian movement for everyone to prepare for that day. There's also a belief that humans would have the ability potentially to one day create life on other planets. Like, what? Remember how I grew up Mormon? I feel like Claude, this must be one of the things that he picked up from Mormonism. Like, this must be a thing that he really liked from Mormonism, because it's part of the Mormon lore that eventually, if you stay on the right and narrow path, then you will become your own God and like create your own world as part of the eternal plan. But the Raëlian interpretation is that humans would be able to create worlds using this advanced technology shared by the Elohim. That technology apparently unlocks the secrets of creation so that a perpetual chain of the creation of worlds can continue. How very Mormon of them. In this vein, Raëlism also states that the Elohim have special computers that record the memories and DNA of humans. Like, the computers are just way advanced in technology. So even though it doesn't make any sense how that would work, it works, okay? Because they're just really advanced computers. And they record like the DNA and the memories of humans so that they can be reincarnated someday. In the reincarnation, everyone would face the judgments of the things they did during their life. It's really interesting interpretation of like the final judgment. Okay, so when you decide to become a Raëlian, you have a baptism ritual. You are baptized, and they call it transmission of the cellular plan. It has to be performed by a high-ranking Raëlian, like a clergy, basically their version of a clergy person, that is called a guide. And in this baptism, you renounce any other affiliation with other religions, and it's only performed on 4 days of the year, which mark anniversaries in the Raëlian calendar. I saw this in the Netflix documentary that I mentioned. So the guy put some water on the person's forehead, Okay. And then they put one hand, like with their hand laying on the forehead. And then they put the other hand, the guide puts their other hand behind the head. So they're kind of like holding the head for a second. And it's said that the guide is telepathically transmitting the convert's cellular code to the Elohim. Okay. And the Elohim then record that in their advanced computers. And they recognize it as like you accepting them and that you're devoted to the Raëlian cause. And they're like pleased and they fill you with warm feelings of love. Another practice in Raëlism is called sensual meditation, which encourages members to participate in this type of guided meditation to transmit love to the Elohim and like form a telepathic link with them, kind of like praying, I guess. But it involves a lot more than praying because it involves visualization, massage, kissing, and stroking. So this is connected with their beliefs that I mentioned earlier, um, in recognizing all kinds of sexual relationships and being open with their bodies and being open with sexuality. These beliefs have gotten them into some trouble when it comes to sexualizing children. Especially young girls. They believe that what is at the root of all human violence is people who are sensually dissatisfied, and that people should be taught to enjoy all of their senses, including children. I just really hate their use of sensual so much. Somehow it just like feels grosser. So, one of Claude's books, I'm going to read a quote here, says, "This is why we must learn to enjoy all of our senses and help everyone around us to discover their total sensuality, starting with children. It is not sufficient to show them how it works, like sexual education tends to do, but we must teach them how to use it so as to obtain and give more pleasure." To me, this quote will just never not sound creepy and gross. Another belief of the Raelians is called geniocracy, which is where they believe that society should be run and decided upon only by geniuses. So they believe that people should only be able to run and hold office if they meet certain intelligence thresholds, and then likewise people should only be allowed to vote if they meet certain intelligence thresholds. In their opinion, by having only smart people be allowed to make decisions about how society is run, then it would create a perfect, peaceful, and fair society. I just feel like I see so many plot holes in this logic, and that's a discussion for another day. Okay, the last big tenet I want to mention here of Raelian beliefs is their belief in cloning. I'm going to talk more about this in a bit because there is actually a large story here. But basically, Raelians believe that cloning is the means that humans have to obtain eternal life. And at first hearing that, you might be confused because you might be like me, where you think, okay, but that doesn't make sense because you can clone something, but that doesn't make it actually the same individual. You know, like identical twins, they're genetically the same, but they're obviously two different individuals. But Raelians believe in the idea of mind transfer along with the cloning, which still I'm assuming here that there also has to be some beliefs around epigenetics, because epigenetics um refers to how like the environment actually shapes your DNA and how your DNA expresses itself based on the environment. Because even if you have like a DNA replica of yourself and your consciousness downloaded into it, it still wouldn't mean that that would be like your exact personage, your exact body. There's a lot of complexity in how an individual comes to be who they are and what they look like, a lot more than just copying DNA and downloading consciousness. Okay. But I guess that's a conversation for a different day. So it was at this point that I started to ask myself, what the heck was his wife doing and his kids? Well, if you remember, he and his wife, Marie Paul, got married in 1970 and they had two kids. Well, in 1985, they got a divorce. His wife and kids were technically followers of Raëlism, but his wife has since given some interviews where she shed some light on what their marriage was like. So she has expressed in later interviews how she never truly believed, but she just found herself like sucked into Claude's crazy religion. She has described how she feels like he just had this psychological hold on her and how she stuck around because she felt that the children needed their father. In an interview I found, she said something that I thought was really kind of funny. She said, "I thought I had married a fairly ordinary, if slightly egotistical man, not a freak." She said that at the beginning, she actually felt that Claude truly believed these things he was prophesying. But then over time, became convinced that it was all a ruse to have more sex and to feed his astronomically huge ego. She shared how he was often gone just preaching and trying to convert more followers, but then when he was home, she would walk into orgies in her living room, and she would often like walk into her husband having sex with other women and he wouldn't even bother to stop. Unfortunately, when she finally got the strength to stop putting up with his psychological abuse and leave him, the children were already too involved in the movement, so she was alienated from them for many years, and they refused to see her. They refused to have anything to do with her for a long time afterwards, like years, which must have been so heartbreaking. But those kids, they grew up with Claude as their father being told that he was Rael, this great prophet and messenger. I can definitely identify with how hard it is to leave a religion that you grew up with. So Marie Paul, when she left him, she went back to nursing because she was penniless. She talked about how she was very lonely. But there, it's not all sad. In an interview she gave in 2003, she did say that the kids had finally started talking to her again, that they'd finally come around to like how crazy their father was, and they were stepping away from Raëlism. So I really hope that they are all doing okay. At this point, you may also be wondering, like, what about money? So in the early days, they worked off of member donations and book sales and like annual membership contributions. People higher up in the organization were expected to give more money to the group than others. There were also some admission fees that they collected to like lectures and seminars that Claude would lead. And that they also had people in the organization who provided a lot of volunteer labor. But in the early 90s, Claude announced that the movement needed to build an embassy, a big ass embassy for the Elohim for when they uh, came, so that they would arrive in style and comfort. And he also announced that the Elohim would arrive in 2035. So looking forward to that. But a big embassy also sounds like a lot of money. And mostly they beefed up the money making avenues they had been doing previously, but they added a more formalized donation structure for members, including annual fees and tithing up to 10% of your income. Familiar with that one. High ranking members or like rich members were also expected to donate a lot of money. And it was being spun as like a special honor. It's such a special honor to donate so much money. Big donors will often be celebrated and adored in the community. They also amped up book sales and asks of donations. uh, Claude went on more media outlets, doing more interviews, giving those provocative interviews that he had been giving before, doing his usual thing of like going for major shock value, trying to grab people's attention. A couple of shocking reveals that he gave during some interviews that I thought were kind of funny, was that he said that he is the brother of Jesus Christ and that he was born from a union between his human mother and one of the Elohim. All of the crazy press was like, working. So they got a lot more members and thus more donations. They were getting a lot of media coverage with people tuning in to follow this wacky religion, and in general was just making money flow a lot easier. This is also a time when Claude started throwing around more money. Like he got himself a race car. He couldn't let it go. Okay, he couldn't let the race car driving go. So he got himself a race car and he started racing it, and it was like, well, it's going to bring in a lot of good press for the movement. It's going to make everybody notice if I'm driving this car on behalf of the Raëlian movement. It's going to get us a bunch of followers. It's going to help spread the message. But to this day, the movement claims that Claude is not paid a salary like from the funds of the movement, like from the members. But there's not a lot of transparency here, so who can really say? And at this point, you may have thought that you heard everything about all the inappropriate sex stuff, but you're wrong. Because in 1998, Claude started an official all-female group called the Order of Rael's Angels. This group of women is considered the group of the most beautiful Raelian women, and they're going to be the only ones who get to be in contact with the Elohim when they come, including being lovers and liaisons of the Raelians. I don't know, just kind of sounds like prostitutes or geishas. Being part of the group mostly involves maintaining your beauty, like being on a special diet. Also, you're expected to develop your feminine nature, including being gentle and pure and disciplined. And they have to pray to the Elohim constantly. There are three different groups of angels. The white angels are those that are tasked with attracting more women to the Raëlian movement. They're also considered like the ordinary angels. They're the lowest tier. So I guess they're like the ones who are like kind of pretty. I don't know. These women, the white angels, they're allowed to take ordinary human lovers. Then there are the pink angels, and they are the ones who are destined to become the consorts of the Elohim, and they are like the middle tier. Then the top tier are the gold angels, okay? And the gold angels, this is the highest level. It's the women who are handpicked by Claude himself as being the most beautiful. And they are tasked with being the very first humans who get to approach the Elohim when they arrive on Earth. The very first humans. Both the pink and the gold angels are expected to refrain from any sexual activities with humans, okay? Saving themselves only for the Elohim. Except, of course, there's an exception here, because except they need to receive instruction on alien lovemaking from Claude himself as the leader, okay? Only the messenger can know how to instruct these very beautiful women how to have sex with the aliens. So he has to, he has to do it. He has to do it. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. All of the angels are quite insulated from the world because not only are they like Raëlian, which separates them from the real world, but also they live in special living quarters with restricted access. Also, the women who like get older or lose their beauty in some way, they're just kicked out of the group, removed. Okay, this is a very superficial qualifications here. I just want to say that I hope you, as the viewer, know that women are people, like women are full people, and they have value beyond just being beautiful ornaments for male pleasure. I definitely don't want to have anything to do with any kind of deity, god, or supreme being who thinks that women's only value is being pretty little sex toys. Okay, switching gears. So remember how I said I was going to come back to the cloning? Okay, well, let's talk about it. The Raëlian cloning stuff centers around a woman named Brigitte Boisselier. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. Brigitte was born in 1956 in France, and she always had a mind for science, and she does have a lot of degrees to show for it. She has a master's degree in biochemistry and a PhD in chemistry, from the University of Dijon. I hear they make great mustard. And then she got another PhD in chemistry from the University of Houston, Texas. And in 1992, Brigitte attended an event where Claude spoke, and she was converted, just feeling like he was being completely honest, and she was just converted on the spot. I think knowing that she was a woman of science, I can just imagine how the Raëlian beliefs of creation and like advanced technology and everything, these scientific kind of explanations to the Bible, I think it probably really attracted her, like with her scientific mind. At the same time that she joined the movement, she actually left her husband saying that he was violent. So that's another thing to think about. Like, she was obviously in a bad spot with her marriage and she wanted to leave him. And then she comes across this like confident, charismatic guy talking about this whole new idea of how the world works, and it just really like jives with her current way of thinking. And I don't know, it just seemed like it. I can see how this was like a perfect storm here in her life for joining the Raëlian movement. So she joins up with the Raëlian movement and leaves her husband. And then she has a bunch of issues with losing custody of her children to her husband because the government like doesn't look nicely on her joining this crazy organization. But she ultimately chooses Raëlism over being with her kids. She ends up making a huge impact on the Raëlian movement and making a lot of news. Being a woman of science, she takes up human cloning on behalf of the Raëlian movement. Claude officially started a company called Clonaid in 1997, specifically with the aim to birth a cloned human child. He put Brigitte in as the scientific director of Clonaid. During this time, there was a lot of talk about what to do with cloning. I actually remember being a child and hearing a lot of the news stories at the time. But governments were trying to figure out what to do about cloning and trying to create some laws that would just prevent any worst case scenarios. And it was kind of this question of like, should cloning be completely outlawed? Like, are there certain technologies that we should develop, but just limit the use cases, because cloning can have a lot of scientific use cases. It was really a moral conundrum of the time because people were seeing how rapidly this technology of cloning was advancing. And then along comes this crazy religious group that kind of dives all in, saying they're going to go straight at trying to clone a human. The Raëlian plan for Clonaid was to have one of the angels. Remember the group of the Order of Angels that I mentioned before? One of those women to volunteer to donate her genetic material, and so that then they could create a cloned human embryo, and then they would have her, the angel, like carry the child and birth this cloned human child. Many of the angels volunteered and like desperately wanted to be chosen so that they could have the honor of like being, the one who carries the cloned child, including Brigitte's oldest daughter, who was part of the Raëlian movement at the time. And in an interview, Brigitte said how proud she was of her daughter that she would volunteer. Brigitte did a lot of press for the Raëlian movement at the time, trying to advocate for human cloning and getting the public on their side. They really didn't seem to care how much pushback there was, because remember, this is a group kind of based on the principle that all press is good press. There is no such thing as bad press. It was really believed that the more Brigitte had to go and fight in court or be asked to do press or be asked to speak in front of world leaders, that it would all ultimately lead to more people hearing about the movement and more people joining and gaining more followers. And they were right. It did lead to more people hearing about the movement and a swell in membership. But also, along with that, a lot of people who were trashing the Raëlians and were very anti the Raëlian movement. So in December 2002, Brigitte gave a press conference in Florida announcing that the company had successfully cloned a human child and for an infertile couple, and that child had just been born and they were nicknaming her Eve. And the media went nuts. Like, can you imagine hearing that the first successful human child had just cloned human child had just been born? Many people demanded that they provide proof of the child, but Brigitte insisted that for the privacy of the couple and for the safety of the child, that she couldn't reveal any details. In January 2003, legal proceedings began seeking that the child's parents be brought to light, like be brought out into the public, so that the health of the child could be assessed and verified. Brigitte was brought into court, but again, she claimed that she had no information. And then finally, she claimed that the child was in Israel, which then left the court with no jurisdiction. So the case fell apart and just that's it. After Brigitte's performance in court, people really started feeling like something was off, something was fishy, because she continued to claim that there was a clone child out here, but absolutely no proof had ever been brought forth. She claimed over the next few years that there were actually more successfully cloned children, stating in 2004 that there were a total of 13 successful human clones. She never produced any evidence, and she would really get quite dodgy and awkward and weird if you tried to ask her any direct questions about it. Like if you tried to ask her, for example, when the last time she heard from the parents was, or when the last time she got updates about any of the children were, even just something like that of like, hey, are you still in contact with the parents? When did you last hear from them? She would get really squirrely and dodgy. And she would claim that like, oh, I'm not in contact with any of the parents anymore for their safety and stuff. Like I'm not in contact with them. Now people believe that this was all probably a big hoax. And the media coverage of all of this ended up leading to the US banning cloning. So I don't know, it kind of feels like sometimes bad press is just bad press. To this day, Brigitte in interviews continues to claim that all of these cloned human children are real, that they really happened, that they're out existing, living in the world. This feels like a good segue to mention the group's fraught legal issues. Like, remember how they originally set up camp in an old campground in southern France that they named Eden? They eventually had to abandon Eden because of legal issues. From France, the group officially moved to Canada, just seeking a friendlier environment, but then they faced legal troubles there as well. In 1990s France, there was this group called the Order of the Solar Temple, which it caused some murders and suicides. Like it led to some deaths, this group. So the government, they were like feeling really wary of new religious groups. And in 1995, they added Raëlism to the French government list of cults. And then all of that stuff with clonade and human cloning happened that I just talked about. And then there's like been a lot of tax stuff in various countries as well. And some child sex abuse cases got taken up against the group. But, you know, it just kind of feels like once one climate gets too hot in a certain country, then Claude will just pick up, run to a new one, leaves all the problems behind in the previous country and just starts over a little bit. Clean slate. Doesn't ever actually deal with any of the legal trouble. The Netflix documentary left off with Claude running the movement from Japan. Let's talk about membership numbers here, because how many people like are truly believing in this weird, crazy, wacky, curious religion? And it's hard to find reliable numbers, I'm going to be honest with you, because like a lot of religious groups, the Raëlians self-report numbers that are like way super high, and way different from outside scholarly sources. And then you've got the issue of like, what do you consider a member? Like, are you only counting people who've like done the baptism ritual? What about people who might be just kind of curious, investigating? What about sympathizers, loosely affiliated people or investigators? You know what I mean? Like, how much are we keeping track of anybody who's left the religion? I don't know. But some estimates that I found was in those early days in the 70s, it was somewhere in the like thousand, it got up to about 1,000-ish people. And then during the early 2000s, with the cloning media coverage, it was somewhere around 55 to 65,000. And then currently, the Raëlian movement claims that there are 130,000 people, members, over 120 countries, but independent estimates put that number closer to like 40 to 65,000. Okay, so let's come full circle here, and I want to talk about some interviews that I found with his mother Colette and his aunt Therese, the two sisters, because they once, Raëlism got going, had a falling out and wouldn't talk to each other. And Claude's mother, Colette, said that she feels that he is just nutty and crazy, and she doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. She's completely embarrassed by him. And she takes out a lot of anger on her sister because she's like, what the hell? I thought that you would be a better mother to him than I was. Ugh, what? Like, look how he turned out. Like, I left him with you and look how he turned out. Therese remained much more sympathetic to Claude, and she continued to hold a good opinion of him, even though, like, she admits that he went a bit too far, is how she said it in this interview. She blames Claude's issues on Colette for being a bad mother and giving him an unstable, like, early upbringing. Others have expressed that they feel that Claude's issues are all the fantasy of an egotistical man with a lot of daddy issues, and an insatiable need to be center of attention. Members who have left have expressed frustration at how much hold he had over them and how much money they wasted to support Claude and his every harebrained whim. Like, remember the race car thing when he was bought that race car and then was using the race cars being all like, oh yeah, it will help spread the word about the Raëlian movement. Well, now ex members like express extreme cringe at themselves at how they gladly like pulled out their wallets and gave money to Claude so that he could just fulfill this dream of racing cars. Like, he was just a mediocre racing person, and like, what a waste of money. People have expressed regret at the years that they wasted in the Raëlian movement following Claude, years that they'll never get back. Like, they feel that Claude stole from their lives. Many people were alienated from loved ones, including spouses and children, because of joining the movement. And that's just precious time and precious relationships that they sometimes can't get back. Many ex members have also accused him of plagiarism for many of the Raëlian beliefs, but there was one that I felt like seemed the most glaring that I wanted to mention. And it's about a French author named Jean Sendy, who wrote a book titled The Moon, the Key to the Bible. And in this book, Jean talked about the idea of the gods being named Elohim, like Elohim being the name of the gods who were not actually gods, but who were an alien race. And that the book of Genesis is actually a history of these humanoid aliens colonizing the earth. Sounds awfully familiar. Hmm? What would even make people attracted to joining this religion? Well, I think that many scientifically minded people probably uh, think it seems interesting. Like Brigitte, for example. Also, there's always going to be people looking for a group to belong to. Like, we're social creatures, and humans like having some way of making sense of it all and having some kind of roadmap and having a built-in group to do that with. Sometimes, a leader with an idea can come along and it just strikes just the right chord with where you are in your life. It can make you feel a certain way that you like, that you want to feel. A lot of people really liked the sensual meditation principles and the openness with relationships and bodies and sex. I mean, some of that does sound kind of nice, actually. I think a lot of us could understand how those kinds of principles could feel freeing. I also think it's worth mentioning Claude's whole new take on the Bible. Like it is interesting, and it's almost like a science fiction or fantasy story. As a former Mormon, I can understand how some of the like world building fantasy aspects can be attractive. It kind of like tickles the part of our brain that just loves interesting stories. Lastly, I wanted to end on something from the very end of the Netflix documentary, which really struck me personally. And it was a sentiment from Brigitte when the producers asked her, like, what would you do if you found out now that it was all fake or something like that? I'm paraphrasing here. And then she said that, and again, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but uh, she basically said that she would like probably laugh and be thankful. She wouldn't be upset or angry. She would still be happy about how she had spent her life and the choices she had made. I felt like this was really powerful because when I was a believing Mormon, I felt the exact same way. I thought that even if it was not true, that I still would be glad to have been engaged in such a worthwhile cause and like a beautiful organization that was only doing good things. Boy, was I so, 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 so wrong. Like, so wrong. Everything about that thought was just like so wrong. And I couldn't see it because I was such a believer. I had no idea that it was not the beautiful organization I thought it was. I had no idea um how much regret I would feel. But I still think that there's hope for Brigitte yet. Like I think that every one of us is capable of change at any time. So what do you think? Would you join up with the Raëlians? Do you sympathize with them? Do you think it sounds intriguing? Were you as interested in this as I was? I hope so. Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you happen to be a current or former Raëlian or have a personal connection with the group in some way, let me know that too. If you think I got anything wrong, I'd love to hear it. I just love to hear all of your thoughts. Just tell me all your thoughts, okay? Anyway, thanks for joining me. That one was a lot of research. I hope it wasn't too long. If you made it to the end, thanks for sticking with me. I hope you have a great day. Love you. Bye.